We've witnessed political campaigns like no other this election season, as political parties have been firing on all cylinders as we approach the presidential election next month. For the first time in Nigerian politics, it is not a two-horse race between the top two political parties. However, the strong favorites still remain the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, and the main opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, with the Labour Party and New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, coming on their heels. Joining us on this show this morning to discuss the state of Nigerian politics and the 2023 general election is Professor Udenta, a founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy. Welcome to the morning show, Professor Udenta.
Thank you, Dr. Ruben, and then thank you, Ayo, too. Well, if I were there in Lagos, I would chop knuckles, but I can only wave my hand and say, I thank you to be here. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, good to have you on the program. But just before we go into the details of our conversation, let me ask you, because I know you've been involved in politics long before now, are you affiliated to any of the current campaigns for office in 2023 general elections?
I'm not yet affiliated to any of the campaigns, and that's a circumstance that can change rather quickly. But as a Nigerian patriot, and I consider myself equally a nationalist and a statesman in this particular republic, I have a stake in the outcome of this election. I have a stake in the future of democracy. I have a stake in the survival of the Nigerian state. Dr. Ruben, let me take you back to Ngugi wa Thiong'o. You know him very well as I do. He wrote a book called Writers in Politics. I can reframe it as Citizens in Politics. No citizen can escape the political pressures and pulls and forces of his or her time. What he can elect is what kind of politics to play, what kind of dimension of it, what kind of perspective. Politics of the rich or the poor, or the oppressed or the oppressors. But every citizen must engage. That is what I'm engaging. And for good measure, let me give you a little bit of context and background. I was a senior lecturer at the age of 30, 1995 or 6. And I was going to be assessed as an associate professor in 1998. Nigerian political process, the democratization struggle, put an end to all that. Before I could finish my assessment, I was already spending 5 months in detention on a cold cement floor. That was the 6th spell. Subsequently, I became the founding secretary of Alliance for Democracy, as you put out in your intro. And before I finished up, secretary of the Board of Trustees. I was the secretary of the Alliance Committee of APP and AD, and the summit of the two political parties. And I led the AD team, at Ijebode when Bashikola Detona tried to bring the two parties together. That's a long time ago. And that's what before Atiku was sworn in 1999. So as the Secretary of Alliance for Democracy, I superintended directly with the process that produced every single entity, every governor, every senator, every rep. I supervised it. All the records are with me in safekeep from 1998-99. So I have a stake in this democracy, its functioning, its direction or trajectory. And it's important for citizens like us who have given our all to the country to step forward now. But today I speak in measured tones because I haven't taken the gloves off, not be partisanly inclined. But if I'm going to be partisan down the line towards the election, the gloves will be off, Ruben.
All right. Well, thank you for just sharing your antecedents and the role you've played in the political history of Nigeria. But I'd like to ask you, Professor, as the founding secretary of the Alliance for Democracy, why are you not in APC? It should be your natural political home, shouldn't it?
Well, APC ought to be my natural political home, but Alliance for Democracy was an ideologically formulated entity. It grew out of that convulsive period in which we struggled for democracy, in which a lot of people lost their lives. Many went into exile. Some spent time in detention. Others disappeared today without being accounted for. So when the party was put together, it was with that robust civil society intent in rescuing this country. APC is not Alliance for Democracy. APC is a special purpose vehicle. It's a contraption. It is just an institutional design for people to attain power. And having attained power 7 years ago, 8 years ago, that power has been abused. So I'm an ideologically minded individual. I left Alliance for Democracy as Secretary of the Board of Trustees in 2001, and I've never joined a single political party then. It's important that deposit this fact. I've never belonged to a party from 2001 till date. I've played part in the political process. I've engaged in projects. But my primary consideration is the health of our democracy and protection of civil liberties. So I take this opportunity on the onset to throw this note of warning. Bola Tinubu, for example, went on exile because of the excesses of the Abacha government in repressing press freedom, in burning down media institutions. I spent 6 times in detention 6 times for same reason. For allowing for All Progressive Congress under his watch, his campaign organization, to hound the media, not because I'm on a right studio. If I'm TVC studio, I'll make this point with passion. Or the studios of the nation, talking to people, being interviewed. Journalists shouldn't be handled under any consideration. People like us worship the freedom of the media and the press. Press Council, NBC, meetings of part of elders of this particular domain. For what purpose? That's how he went on exile. Because of his life. That's why he went into detention. So for his own media team, for the PCC of the APC, to hound the media to no end, is regrettable. It's intolerable. And it's something which, I have to put out right there before we go into the deeper conversation about the politics of 2023 and the likelihood of the presidential election swinging one way or the other.
Okay. In the introduction, I mentioned 4 names, 4 presidential candidates. Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, Tinubu of the APC, Peter Obi of the Labour Party, and Rabiu Kwankwanso of the New Nigeria People's Party. If we were to assess these candidates individually, what's your take on their chances?
My take is very simple at this stage. I don't know what is going to form in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. 24 hours in politics is a lifetime. But as it stands now, let me begin with Atiku Abubakar, PDP. He will win the next election for the following reasons. The convergence of national forces are now slowly building around him. He's been very long in the business for 30 odd years. This will be the combination of his years of building bridges, networks, alliances at the level of the elite that can filter down to the masses. Secondly, the abject performance of the APC government is plainly ridiculous. I won't talk about the tragedies of the moment, poverty capital of the world, out-of-school children, ungoverned spaces exploding before our very eyes, fault lines deepening, fractures and features of the nation comprehensively collapsing. And most crucially, he's favored by geography and demography. What do I mean by that? There's always a preponderance of opinion now that P2B of Labour Party will do extremely very well in the Southeast, without a single governor backing him, without a single senator or member of the Reps, or member House of Representatives, without the local government infrastructure. And there's a preponderance of opinion too that Tinubu of APC will likely win the Southwest. So what makes anybody think that he will not win the entire North? If P2B will win the South without a single governor, why would Atiku take the North? That is a primal instinct that drives Nigerian politics. It's a bit irrational and sometimes illogical, but that's where we are. The Enlightenment spirit can still propel us to a better mode of leadership production beyond primordial loyalties. But as it stands now, if the North heaves in a tectonic shift, and what wouldn't they? He's going to win. For P2B, I look at he and his obedient movement as an incomplete revolution. The incompleteness of that revolutionary eruption wouldn't have matured sufficiently to come together with all the integers that give power in February 2023. So he will fall short. But the energy, the dynamism which he has evoked in the system, which Bukola Saraki, former Senate President, talked about when he was on this show, that the Southeast is PDP's main challenge because of the labor that Obi has put out there. There are 2 forces shaping its own momentum. One, the disruptive spirit of Nigerian youth with some discontented elite and that sense of historical restitution which the Southeast will require. That is why the Southeast is now a contest of heart and head. The heart is the obedient heart of Obi. The head is that of Atiku. So when there's a convergence in order to build the political soul of the Southeast, the two will share that zone. But they will do extremely well. That is why anybody in PDP, in APC, must look at that process that is building, that momentum, with sensitivity and empathy. Because we need a policy of inclusion. Even when Atiku wins election, it must bring the Obi and disobedient movement into the fold quickly, in that sense of unification. Same with APC and Bola Tinubu. Coming to APC and Bola Tinubu, it's plainly obvious that the irrational instinct that drives Nigerian politics is why APC stays standing as a contending force, given the history of the past 7 or 8 years. There's no way it can deodorize the sense of loss of the nation, the weakening of our historist spirit, the decomposition of the post-colonial before our very eyes. From the Boko Haram in the northeast, pinned down within that tiny zone in 2014, with its internal domestic wing decapitated by the Jonathan government and external forces coming through the Maghreb from Libya. Today, we're not contending with that alone. We're contending with banditry across the entire north, separatist agitation in the southeast and the south-south, oil bunkering and steel in the southwest, a collapse in national economy, a currency that has gone high wire, and even the party fighting even the CBN governor to stand still when he's doing his best to rescue the legacy of Muhammad Buhari. That's number one. Number two is what I can call the transmogrification of our friend Bola Tinubu from a mortal to a god. When he moved from the realms of mortality with the frailties and inadequacies and vulnerabilities all of us have to becoming a god. Not just a Milokun, I may not get the pronunciation very well, but that sense of a Lehi, with which he described that boy, Abiodun. This one. People like us who are Secretary of Alliance for Democracy, I can tell him too, Lehi. Who the hell were you by 1998, 99? I've given you the background. And most importantly, by de-deifying Bola Tinubu, by stripping him of that sense of false divinity, and by restoring him to the carnality of mortality back to earth, in a defeat, will be very purgatory for the nation. My final comment on APC in this regard is that the sense of atavism within the party is destroying the country. A CBA governor is hiding from pillar to post, not from a PDP or from Labour Party. He's hiding from the same forces in APC and the government of Muhammad Buhari, who is striving very valiantly in the dying days with the dying embers of his government to rescue his legacy already consumed in smoke. For Kwankwaso, the momentum is not as much as I thought he will have. Initially, there's that big force around him, that court followership, that sense of charisma. But it's shrinking if the data available is anything to go back. And it's shrinking because of the demography and geography I talked about. Who the hell knows how the APC governors will behave or what they will do? Who the hell knows whether the masses will listen to them? If Kwankwaso is shrinking and we cannot predict with any sense of assurance the behavior of the APC governors across the north, it's Atiku's day and his election to win.
All right, thank you for your analysis. In your view, Professor Udenta, I'm sure that Dr. Kwankwaso will beg to differ. In his speech at Chatham House yesterday, he had mentioned that his party and his person has national appeal, and perhaps he is the best candidate to win in terms of experience and track record to win the presidential elections. A few things around that. But you mentioned about Mr. Peter Obi that one of the things that he has going for him is the discontented elite. And so I'd like to ask you, because there's a growing talk about building elite consensus post-2023 election for state survival. Now, do you subscribe to that framework?
Well, the framework shouldn't even be elite consensus. The framework should be national consensus. In building national consensus, you transcend the threshold of the elite. You must embrace the domain, the dimension of the mass. In 1998-99, we crafted the elite consensus. I told you, if you read B.C. Akonde's My Participations, he said there, Udenta moved the motion that ended APP. I didn't move any motion. I gave 3 proclamations that Shinkafi and Mahmoud Waziri couldn't follow up with. So I ended APP. I did. If you look at what I told you about when we came back as AT and APP to form a unified rank against PDP, I was secretary of that party with Tanko Yakasai as the chairman. That's a elite consensus we're building. When Ziva had to step down for Falaye, as I said in previous discussions, Falaye didn't beat Bola again Ibadan to become candidate of AD. He had to come to Abuja to ratify that. And Dr. Chukwuemeka could have beaten him hands down. I have the records. 99.9% of AD files and documents are in my safe keep. I will later yield it to National Archives, but for now they are with me. So I speak with authority on this. So he stepped down, and the Dr. Bonion, who won the primary of APP, stepped aside. We didn't even look at him. We built a consensus in order to have that restitution of historical injustice against the Southwest and Abiola. And PDP did the same. As the Kwame lost the election, he embraced Obasanjo. So we had some sense of elite energy coming together. So when the government was formed by Obasanjo and Atiku in 1999, they quickly established an office of inter-party collaboration or inter-party affairs with Mahmoud Wazir, the first special advisor, almost with the cabinet rank in a position. And they brought in elements within the AD, brought in Uncle Bola Ige, they brought in Dudu Adalaja, this daughter of later Brahma Desa, as part of that AD team in that government, including late SK Babalola from Ekiti State. Mahmoud Waziri became a special advisor, and then Mohammed Shatta became Minister of Interior. That's some level of elite consensus. We're going to look at national consensus in 2023. When Atiku wins and is sworn in, he must build a consensus among the ranks of everybody. He must bring in P2B and the obedient movement together into his own domain. He must bring in Bola Tinubu and the rump of the progressive wing of the APC. He must bring in Kwankwaso and his team and other candidates too. He must reach out to labor, to civil society, to the media. He must protect press freedom, which APC is not doing. He must ensure that traditional rulers and key stakeholders across the country come on board in a massive conversation. He may even have to establish a committee on national unification. So if you don't unify the intelligence here, bring in the military industrial complex into it, and the private sector, and labor, and the political elite, it can never have peace, and without peace, the country can make progress. Conflict is of two modes. The organic conflict you find, insurgency in the southeast, one nation movement in the southwest, Boko Haram in the northeast. But there's some constructed conflicts which are spawned by the elite because of the sense of detachment from a system when they feel discontented. So I don't subscribe just to merely elite consensus. You must build national consensus so they don't have a trickle-down effect, a very top-heavy and a very weak base. The base must be strengthened as we tried to do it in 1998-99, when we tried to purify the political system from all the incrustations and oddities that Abacha infused in it. When we brought out people from obscurity and made them governors and senators and reps, and some of them today have become gods before our very eyes. That is the sense of national consensus building. That's the sense of unification of the soul in order to heal or bind the wounds of division. This country is sorely divided. And that is why, whether I'm partisan or not, I have a compelling duty to weigh in. I should have been a professor in 1999, but it didn't happen because of Nigeria. I took a bus every two times a week for 3 years with swollen legs, discussing with international organizations, impasses, how to build this democracy, not how to make money. When people like Ayo Adebanjo speaks, whatever decision has taken, I respect him because he has paid his dues. And there are those today who have become God that don't even remember the old man again. They should venerate the very feet he walks, like the rest across the country. So, and again, let me put it this way. The politics of the now is different from the politics of the past 20, 25 years or even beyond. When we had the conversation, supervised and superintended by Wujale, I led the AD team with Oyeku, Chief Oyeku, Chukwuemeka Zife, far older than me, former governors. With Yusuf Mama, Twin Oluwabayi, so the Bokna Kere, Bokna, and Les Michelia, and the PDP team was jointly led by Bamanga Tuko and later by Damushi Rama, with late Sonda Woniyi as a member, with Yochia Yukuri chairman of PDP as a member, with Jerry Gana as a member, Open Modiscan of the party as a member. We were there in order to build some sense of a new nation, a new dawn. We didn't care about class differentials or political affiliations, ideological tendencies or divides. The primary consideration was patriotism, how to rescue this country. Today, all that is gone. Yes, Dr. Bati, I'm listening.
Yeah, let's look at some of the stakeholders, in the current process. The media, particularly. Mahmoud Yakubu, the INEC chairman, was talking about collaboration, inclusiveness, and all of that. But one of the major highlights as we begin to count down to the general elections has been the role of the media. And some commentators have said that, yes, the media has a constitutional role under Section 22, under Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution. But some of these politicians and their spokespersons, they appear to have been intimidating media houses, journalists, engaging in unnecessary mudslinging, in my view. What do you think is the implication of this for free speech and civil liberties?
The implication is there for the country. Therefore, my own take is a dire warning. At the beginning, I did say that Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, my longtime good friend, went into exile because of the situation he just described under the military. He ran for his dear life. I spent space of detention 6 times in Nigeria. The last was for 3-4 months, if I recall correctly. I didn't shave for 3 months. I didn't take my bath for 2 months. Not because I stole money, I was fraudulent. I was fighting not only for democratic restoration, but for media rights and civil liberties. That is why I would love to sit down with people from the nation in the newspapers in the past 6 months. Go check it. Next time I'm on any show, I'll come with 20 copies, back copies. It's obsessed with PDP. Everything, the front page. Nobody has taken them to the cleaners. That is what it should be. That's the own ideological affiliation and tendency. You can quarrel with it so long as they do it within the bounds of the law. TVC, of course, is cured in favor of the candidate who owns it, but then that is what it should be. People like us venerate press freedom as religion. That is why the American Constitution is one of the primary amendments. So what the chairman of INEC said is important, media collaboration, but when you write letters to press council, to state media organizations of their rights to exist, when it throws journalists out of functions because you want to record the function, not a live feed, is it a court meeting? Is it a darkened room with cloak and dagger kind of politics you don't want people to see? Journalistic excesses are sometimes very well tolerated because the moment you take away that primary power of the media to hold accountable all of us, especially those in power and those in government, the mighty, then society is gone. So that sense of illiberalism and authoritarianism, which has infected our political conversation now and driven viciously by the Presidential Council of APC, must end. Enough is enough.
All right.
So partisanship has boundaries and thresholds it cannot cross.
Okay,
This is one of them. The search for power is not an end in itself, but an opportunity to do good for the greater number of people in the society. And media is part of that wider conversation of building democracy in an incremental, brick by brick, block by block method. So I share the grief and the pain of the media.
All right, thank you, Professor. Now, let me go back to your earlier statement when you were, or your review of the frontliners or the top contenders for the presidential election. We talked about APC, PDP, Labour Party, and the NNPP. And you talked about, your analysis of this was largely based on popularity and the mark they've made in different regions in Nigeria. However, in terms of track record, in terms of what they have done, case in point, the APC. The APC is the party in government at the moment. And so you'd imagine that your analysis should also be based on what they've been able to achieve in the last 8 years, alongside the others in terms of what they've done. Do you think the APC has an advantage?
Sure.
In light of the fact that they're the government in power and the party in power, and also what they've done for Nigerians in the last 8 years?
I know President Muhammad Buhari is very eager for his legacy to be continued. And I said it every now and then. I will run a free election show. It's one of my legacies to leave the office with this coming election, the best ever. But I love somebody who will protect my legacy, my achievements, who will continue from there. The best person to do that is Bola Tinubu for APC, because he is going to run as the third term of Muhammad Buhari, the way Hillary Clinton was to run as the third term of Barack Obama. Obama's place in history diminishing because Hillary didn't win. So Bola Tinubu is Buhari's own image, his shadow. He's going to run as the Buhari man who has to grant his vision in a third term. But we hear of Lagos, what is done in Lagos from beginning to the end. How Lagos in the Victorian times that MJC Cheru wrote, Victorian Lagos. Go read that book. How Lagos was during the Victorian era. Go even read the novels of Siri Quincy, Lokotown and other stories. People of the city to see Lagos of the 30s and 40s and 50s. What Jakonde did. Look at what Marwa did, who I'm sure may even beat some of these former governors if he goes for election today in Lagos. So when we talk about Lagos as the springboard for the success of APC, it means a denial of Buhari's own space and place in history. It means that APC candidate and his team, they are frightened about the specter of failure that will haunt them because of the specter of failure that has haunted the Buhari administration. And I said the president is struggling very hard in the dying empires of his government in order to rescue whatever he could of his own legacy. And APC, they know it, that they cannot run with Buhari as a tailwind, rather is a headwind. That means that the legacy of the past 8 years is a legacy of woes and failures, legacy of anguish and pain for the people. It's that kind of legacy that threw up the Biden movement and P2B from obscurity into now being a major contender for power. So if you take that as a major tissue in the conversation, in doing some aggregations, pulling aggregation to say what kind of forces will shape this election, what kind of elements is going to come together to provide victory. The APC record will never provide victory for Bola Tinubu. That is why he doesn't want to talk about it. That's why we talk about what he did in Lagos. That is obscure kind of thing, deflection. Deflect away from what is clear, that you are running for Buhari's third term, precisely for his third term. So when Nigerians vote for APC, they're voting for Buhari. In 2023, they're not voting for Bola Tinubu or APC. Because without Bola Tinubu winning, Buhari's legacy is lost. He's the one to cement it in a 12-year cycle. 4 years, 4 years, and 4 years. Historically, that is what scholars always look at, the period in which you can say the trajectory of performance can be measured up to become irreversible. But it cannot run on the poverty capital of the world. It can't run on the collapsing nation state and exploding in the fault lines. Ungoverned space is multiplied every day. It can't run when insurgencies and banditry and killings and slaughters and economy that is wobbling is the legacy you have. No government is without some measure of success. Let me rebalance that. Buhari has done his bit. But APC should equally recognize has done his own bit and say, we build on your bit. But they don't want to build on his bit. They want to build on some mythical thing that Bola Tinubu did, beyond what Jakonde did, beyond what Marwa, even of the military era, did. You want to build on something we know to have existed in Lagos. The West African Cosmopolitan Center, the megalopolis of Lagos, was their hub. That brought together a sense of not only cultural and intellectual dynamism. Mr. Parin, N.S. Ikoli, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and the rest of them. The springboard for the struggle against colonial imperialism and restoration of our statehood and sovereignty in 1960. Crystallized around Lagos. And we're hearing some mythical fables and tales of what they did in 1999 to 2007 as the basis to win election in 2023. That is shocking to say the least. So take that element out of the table quickly. What I said is not based on popularity. If you listen to me carefully, I said 2 elements are at the heart of the Biden movement. A sense of disruption which the youth has brought to bear to say, we don't belong in this system. We feel excluded. Let us be part of it. He seems to be singing our song. And that sense of historical restitution for justice and equity, the Southeast crave. And as I said, sometimes my heart speaks to that, but I have my head that will guide me. That revolution is an incomplete exercise. That the eruption will not mature enough to win. So Atiku will win. That doesn't mean the PDP the team should be complacent and say he has won, but he's going to win. And when that happens, he must build a nation out of the weight of these passions we have now. He must even embrace his foes. So when I talk about the geography and demography helping him, take that in context.
Professor
APC will likely win the Southwest. Yes.
Udenta, I didn't know that you had added prophesying to your many qualifications and crystal ball gazing because you are so emphatic. Atiku will win. But let me ask you this, which was an issue I raised in my column on Tuesday at the back page of this day newspaper. This electoral process has been so toxic. There's so much desperation. The language has been foul and abusive. But this election will be won and lost at the end of the day. How do we heal the divisions? How do we achieve reconciliation? How do we take the nation through a process of healing after the election has been won and lost?
Okay, now, now, I know when Dr. Bati, my good friend, he laughed and said, "Am I a prophet?" As I said, I'm speaking today with the gloves on. I'm speaking today with dispassion, in spite of my strong words. If I'm to join any of the campaigns, maybe the PDP campaign, I'll take the gloves off and then you see what the conversation is all about. We have come of age in Nigeria, and we dare people to think that our space in this country is small. No, it is not small. As for the dirtiness of the politics, it's always to be expected. That's why, what is that dirtiness but the media? Dr. Bati and I, if you don't have the media, we'll not talk about the dirtiness, about the toxicity of the politics, about how it's become terrible. It's the media. If everybody will stay in his house and do his campaign and that they vote, we'll not even know how toxic it is. But you must allow that sense of toxicness to endure because of the passion we have for press freedom. But I do know that even in the US, that's far more toxic than we have in Nigeria. But at the end of the day, when I use the term to bind the wounds of division, I don't know who said it first. That was one of the opening lines of Donald Trump's victory speech 2016. It is now time to bind the wounds of division. He didn't call Hillary Clinton this woman. He didn't call her this jailbird going to jail. He said, Secretary Hillary Clinton, I hear your pain and that of your people, I will include you. So I expect that after this dust is settled and the media is calm and the politicians are sober, less irrational and less illogical, that sense not just of elite consensus and building, be as a building block for national restart, but that of national consensus in order to accommodate everybody else must become a priority. And as I said, if Atiku were to win, at the end of the day, he must think in terms of, I'm not speaking for the campaign organization, he must think in terms of having a high council for national reconciliation and unification, where you bring in everybody, go to the neck of the party, take some mandate from them and bring everybody on board, reanimate what you did with Obasanjo in 1999 in inter-party office. That's why as language even multiply in intensity and ferocity, and as everybody's weighing in with a sense of passion, sometimes reckless passion, we must know, as you said correctly, Dr. Ruben, there's going to be light shower at the end of the thunderstorm. The fireballs that is politics now must calm. The roaring flames in the earth of our land must equally be calm. The ashes will not be important, but they will be ashes of peace. So after the election successfully delivered and the government is formed, we become one as a nation. It is now governance time, no longer political time. But APC played politics for 8 years and lost the nation. And I can assure you, we lose the next election.
All right, so as we gradually get to the to election date, February 25, Nigerians will go out to make their choice as to who should be the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What would you say, Professor Udenta, are the priority areas for the president to face? I mean, we've talked about economy, the debt profile of Nigeria, we've looked at security, but I'd like you, since you've been able to, from experience, give your judgment as to who would emerge or who could potentially emerge as president. I'd like you to say, in view of these top issues, who is best suited and why?
Okay, well, let me even not talk about who is best suited and so on, because it's very important. I would break it into two. The best suitedness of a candidate may be sense of preparation, equally with a sense of urgency, and then being fully aware of national expectations. Every candidate comes with some bag of, not just expectations, of talents and assets and skill set. Take PDP, for example. He's good with figures. He talks about it. He said he's prudent. Some people say stingy. He's, actually, he has inflamed the political environment with his policy options and choices. So people can say, oh, he was just a governor in a state, but then he has what it takes to become president and do very well. Bola Tinubu, with all the strong words he had from me today, was a governor for 8 years, and then he built some institutions there and built some human beings, have become vice president, become ministers, governors, and so on. So he has something coming. I think Abubakar has been hunting for this thing for long. And for somebody to be devoted in his lifetime, almost the entirety of his adulthood, in pursuit of a dream, it means there is something deep in his heart that he wants to give the country. He gave part of it as vice president for 8 years, effectively for 4 years actually, because the second term was very turbulent with his boss. Now that passion simply means he has a staying power. That staying power is a sense of persistence. That persistence is very key to unlocking maybe the potentials of the nation. And being the vice president the first time when the country was actually caught adrift from the international community to restore it back to sense of committee of nations and the sense of mission and purpose. And he did extraordinarily very well. Whether as an informal leader of the economic team or somebody the president rely on so much to help drive the economic agenda, he seemed to be best suited for the moment in terms of who has the adequacy of experience and exposure and the network to get things done. Having said that, my take is even that I'm not a policy wonk. Policies and what the people expect every day to happen to change their life in terms of education, which has crumbled under this government, in terms of health, which has crumbled too, in terms of security, which has crumbled too. That means human infrastructure that builds human security is gone. That's why the low, the human development index is very, very prevalent, and the multidimensional poverty is haunting the land. As important as these things are, I speak to my head. My head is what Karl Marx said. The history of hitherto existing society, history of class struggle, but all struggles are political struggle. If you don't get the politics right in Nigeria, as you people observe there, you cannot get the economy right. If you don't build national consensus, no matter the policy you have, you throw around there, it will not work. I thought about constructed conflicts. You can have all the beautiful policies there. When the leaders are disconnected and the masses are angry, it means that they're going to spoil the show for you. So the first step is to rebuild, not only to rebuild the country, to rescue the nation first, and then to try to see what they can unify the country. You have to bring in the elites in that level of conversation, then bring in the mass through robust dialogue, civil society, the media, and so on. The intelligentsia. Look at ASO, bleeding. Every day being destroyed by this government, the academic staff of not only the universities, but other high institutions. Look at labor, virtually fizzled out of existence. The government has a duty to even re-empower labor, to reanimate labor. The labor bureaucracy is not there. So when you don't have all these things in place, and then a fledgling in the private sector, which you have a lot of gurus, but very little in terms of content. All these things must come together in order to build a nation that is one. If you get it wrong at the political level, no matter what you do at the, both the macro and then in terms of macroeconomic policies, you will not get it right. No matter your physical regime, no matter the monetary issues you throw out there, the country is gone. So we are not going to allow 8 more years of this insufferable collapse, this slouching into Gomorrah. That's where we're slushing to Gomorrah. Okay. So we shouldn't allow that. We must cause that called a epistemic break or rupture in our history and say, this moment is a cutoff. Let's restart and let's relaunch.
You mentioned insecurity, and that's a source of major concern for many Nigerians and also for international observers. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, speaking at the Chatham House in London, said that they are coming up, or they already have a violence mitigation and advocacy tool, which is supposed to be an app. All of this against the background of over 50 facilities of the INEC having been attacked, and there seems to be no let-up in this regard. Do you have any anxieties about insecurity, violence, derailing the electoral process?
There are always anxieties, but that is why you have a government in place. If you see what happened, I'm sure, Ruben, you recall this, I think you were in government then, in 2015, early 2015, when the then National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, I think at Chatham House was when they dropped that hint that insecurity is a key driver of uncertainty in the electoral cycle 2015. And let us see what the government will do, what the president will come up with. At the end of the day, election was extended in order to clear the Northeast of certain problems there, insecurity problem, terrorist attacks, in order to have election. Nobody's calling for any extension this time around, and that should be put to rest. There was a chairman of INEC Electoral Institute who muted that, and I'm happy the chairman of INEC turned down on it. This government has had enough time to put this in together. 2016, we had a technical defeat of Boko Haram. 2017, the same technical defeat of Boko Haram. He never got defeated. Banditry became infected with terrorism in the north. From cattle rustling and all manners of criminality, it became deeply embedded as cells of Boko Haram in the north and ISWAP. Then in the southeast and the south and the southwest, other levels of destructions are occurring. But elections have to hold, because if you do not want the election as scheduled, you are playing the script of the terrorists and the disruptors. He must do everything possible to protect institutional facilities of INEC, is secure and sensitive electoral materials. He must produce the personnel, because the people, if they are frightened, both the permanent staff and the ad hoc staff, the core members and so on there, if he overspokes them, they may not be able to do their job the way they should do it. So it's worrisome for me, but that worry should not escalate to the level in which we compromise the sanctity of the election. Election may not produce best outcomes of best governance model, but it's a method, of political and democratic sustenance and renewal. That means it is an ontology of the national conversation about power, politics and power. The absence of that ontological formulation, the identity of our democracy defined by the electoral process. So that process must be sanctified by holding this election as scheduled, and by INEC raising this timely warning to the security agencies to spend less time plotting destabilization, either of CBN or whatever, and focus more in tackling these odious situations that has befallen the country.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Udenta, for joining us on the morning show. Thank you very much indeed.